All right, back on with us at What I've Learned podcast, and we have a special guest today, John Cleare. Grant?
Yeah, John, thanks for being on with us. We appreciate having unique personalities with really unique backstories and that have succeeded, not just in the real estate realm, but in a professional realm too. So we're excited to have you on and get to know a little bit more about what you've done and how you've gotten here today.
Well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here.
So, John, tell us a little bit how you started years ago, because you've been in 14 years? 15 years. So 15 years now you've been in the real estate sector, I guess.
Right.
How did you kick it off and how did it start?
Okay, so basically, I was raised to...
Don't leave out the juicy stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got
keep
you.
it as real and
I got you.
as it can be.
So then we'll go all the way back.
All right, all the way back. I love it.
So
Rewind, the cassette rewind.
back to high school, basically I was just an average student. I always hovered around I never forget the 3.167 mark. That's like mostly B's, like 1 or 2 A's, right? So I was just enough so that I got, privileges, to go outside and play or just freedom because my mom was very strict.
Yeah.
And then in the 10th grade, so I went to Cass Tech High School downtown, and it was crazy. So I was at a bus stop, and it was about 50 people around. And I got this vibe that something wasn't, all great, but, but I'm like, it's 50 people around. Nothing's going to happen, right? So this guy, he approaches me, and he puts his arm around my neck, and the first thing out of his mouth is, have you ever been shot before? And basically, he was there to rob me. I had on all this stuff, and he actually robbed me and my friends that were surrounding. Right. And that was a turning point in my life. I felt grateful to be alive. I felt blessed. And I promise you, from that day forward, I got straight A's, like 4.0s, all in high school, right? So we're talking like this was like the first or second quarter in 10th grade when this happened. From the rest of 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, all A's. That provided me the opportunity to get a full scholarship to college, actually the best scholarship in the world, the Gates, the Bill Gates.
Oh, wow.
Yep, so I got that.
That's awesome.
Yep, so they provided a full ride for bachelor's, master's, and PhD, right? So I was doing engineering at the time, and I got accepted to U of M, go blue. And, they were second in the nation at the time for industrial operations engineering. And industrial engineering is all about business optimization. So I was only there for like a year and a half. But what I learned was how to be more productive, right? How to increase productivity. However, so it's always like the second year when I'm in school, something pivotal happens, right? So in high school, got robbed.
Changed your whole life there.
Gave a crap about life, right? In college, it was like my mother gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in my sophomore year.
That's a great book.
And I devoured it. And it's like everything I had been taught, go to school, get good grades, had just been like warped. Like my mind had been warped in a different realm, per se. And basically I dropped out of college with a full scholarship to do real estate. And it's been no turning back. I decided a long time ago that I was full-time unemployable. Like, no amount of money will ever get me to work for somebody else, ever. I can create my own destiny, and that's what I believe, and that's what I teach. And so I ended up moving to Atlanta, and I kind of studied the game, right? So I'm like 19 at the time when I dropped out of college. Okay. So I didn't start buying properties till I was 21, right? So I kind of was stuck in the analysis paralysis stage for about a year and a half before I actually pulled the trigger on real estate. And so basically what I did at the time, so I was one of the first founding members, not founding member, but like one of the first beginning members of Bigger Pockets, right?
Really?
So Joshua Dorkin, he knows me.
Okay.
And that was back when they had like less than 30,000 members, and now they have 1 million plus, right? So I would just like lurk on the forums, like the wholesaling forums, the commercial forums, and I never really said nothing. I would just read and read every day. I would just read what other people were doing, because I believe, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
So I did that for about a year and a half. Now I decided, okay, enough studying. Let's just jump in. And that was back. So this was 2006 when I actually bought my first 2 properties. I bought 2 like within like a month's time, and this was pre 2008. So this was when they were giving mortgages to anybody with a heartbeat. So I basically bought about $400,000 worth of property with no money down. All I needed was like 3 months cash reserves. And so I lived in one. It was a brand new 5-bedroom house. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I'm 21 years old, no kids, no girlfriend, and I'm buying a brand new 5-bedroom house, and it's just me. Yeah. Okay. And then the other one I bought, I ended up renting out to friends. Cardinal mistake, number 1. Well, number 2, actually, the 5-bedroom was the
So you mean that
mistake.
didn't work out well?
Oh no. No. So basically, by renting out the second house to friends, they were taking liberties, and they would get behind on rent. And I think my payment was like $1,600 a month for that property, and for the property I was living in was like $2,400 a month. Mm-hmm. So that's like $4,000. I'm 21 years old. Right. $4,000. Like no real job, right? I'm been studying real estate, jumping in head first. And, so basically the one that I ended up renting, they ended up getting behind on rent, and I had to, kick them out basically. And we ended up doing a short sale. So I learned about the loss mitigation side, and I think the second mortgage was like $32,000, and we ended up getting the bank to accept $1,000 for that second mortgage. So that gave me like instant equity, so I kind of lost, I learned that game. And that was amazing because I was able to actually flip that one for a profit. And then the 5-bedroom that I got, I lost to foreclosure, and foreclosure was a great experience for me because now I get to see, like when I talk to homeowners and they're going through foreclosure, right. Like I understand the stresses that you're going through. Like it feels like the world's going to end. You're so stressed out. The banks are just at you every day, all day. You got all these people calling you, and you just feel like a failure. So dealing with that heartache early on helped make me stronger. And then, of course, fast forward, and so basically because of my failed landlord experience early in the beginning, I decided, I started doing some more research, and I said, okay, let's go to wholesaling. That way I can build substantial profit by using OPM, other people's money and not having to use my own credit, and I became like a master at wholesaling. So I actually went for the big fish at the time. I was going for luxury properties, luxury properties. So I'm still in Atlanta, but I'm going for luxury properties in Texas and Florida and Arizona. And I was actually successful. I closed like a couple, so that allowed me to sustain.
You got your flow going.
Yeah, got the flow going, but it was definitely, a learning experience because now I'm talking with millionaires. I'm like on my knuckles, right? But when I'm talking to them, it's like they can't tell like I'm broke because I just got that motivation and drive. Like they're thinking I'm just the biggest, So that was a great experience because I got to like rub shoulders with
right.
Like affluential people at an early age.
Did you kind of see yourself in their position? Was it easier for you to talk to them because you had imagined you were going to be there anyways?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I've always been a go-getter, and that was my main motivation. Like, if you can do it, I can do it too. And I don't put anybody above me. I don't put myself above anybody else. I believe that, it's just a mindset. Success is just all about mindset.
It comes down to the amount of discipline you're willing to do on your mind.
Right.
That's where I think it makes or break people because we're looking at people. Essentially, we're like in a pandemic of people being lazy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We've got, I had a conversation yesterday with a couple of business owners, and they're just complaining about finding people to work for them. Mm-hmm. They're saying that people don't want to come back to work. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to even supplement income. Mm-hmm. And they're offering them even more money than they would be making under the current circumstances.
Right.
So when you were going through that foreclosure part of your life, and that's painful, it's actually, pretty depressing to go through all that pain at once, but you turned it around and channeled that energy to turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
What would you say to people right now who are going through, all that forbearance arrangement right now and all of that stress, what kind of advice do you have for them? What kind of mindset do you think they should?
Rock bottom is not forever. Like you can always change it. But it does teach you the discipline to not make the same mistake again. And there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So that's definitely what I would say. Just keep a clear mind. Find something that that can motivate you, whether it's podcasts like this or read a book, just something inspirational, or just hang around, just people doing better than you.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And it would definitely rub off.
I think we really need to focus on positivity. I think if you're paying attention to the media constantly, feeding your brain with whatever is out there, and if it's completely negative, you're going to feel like that and walk like that and be like that and talk like that and probably eat like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that once you start making a decision, I'm going to shut that crap off and I'm going to spend 10 minutes to see what's up in the stocks or whatever you're interested in and really get to focusing on what's good for you and what's going to be good moving forward.
Right.
Because how can you retain your ability to discipline your mind and have joy in the simple things if you can't even allocate that choice, right?
Right.
So tell us more. What happened next?
Yeah. So basically, I forgot her name. She's out of Ohio. Something Scott. I can't remember her name, but she was a big time wholesaler at the time. I never actually bought a real estate course. Like I said, I was like a forum lurker. Bigger Pockets was kind of like the go-to. And I don't know if you remember REI Club. I don't know if they're still around, but like between Bigger Pockets and REI Club, those were like my main two go-tos as far as like the forums. I got her name in my mind, but I can't think about it. But she was in Ohio and she was crushing it on the wholesale side.
Right.
Like something Scott. Her name starts with a D. Dana Scott. I can't think. But yeah, she was crushing it, like talking about, making $10,000 a deal, which at the time for me, I mean, was
big.
$10,000 was a lot of money. Okay.
It's still a lot of money.
It's still a lot of money, right?
Still
And,
most wholesale deals.
it's all relative. She was crushing it. So she would offer like little free like ebooks and things like that. And I wouldn't buy her course, but I would kind of suck up, and like soak up her free material. And I basically just duplicated it,
Right.
Started in Atlanta, then I ended up moving. So I lived in Atlanta for 6 years, and I was basically just wholesaling the whole time I was there. And then I moved back to Michigan because my grandmother passed, and I am still blessed enough to have my mother and father. They're both still alive, and I said, okay, I don't want to be away from them. Like I was away from my grandmother when she passed. So that's the only reason I came back to Michigan. And
that's basically, you've seen that meme, and they open it up, there's this huge book, and they say, here's all the reasons to live in Michigan. And there's only one page, family. That's it.
I posted that last year.
I'm like,
exactly.
I was just thinking that.
And the crazy thing is, when I was at the DMV, it's like, like she looked at, my Georgia license, and she like, oh, family, right? Like at the DMV, like she already knew. Like, yes, the only reason I'm back. So, so I'm just all about turning lemons into lemonade.
So when you did this transition from being busy in Atlanta and you get back here, how did you get business? How do you kick it off?
Yeah, so it was a transition. So basically, had to join the groups. Like Facebook definitely helped with the real estate groups, and I kind of just worked backwards. Find out what people want. So I actually started out primarily focused on Oakland and Macomb County because I was mostly dealing with local investors at the time. And, nobody wants to touch Detroit. Nobody wants to touch Flint. Nobody wants to touch Inkster, Pontiac, blah, 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 right? Everybody wanted, like,
the good stuff
East
in
Point,
between.
St. Clair Shores, Farmington, Bloomfield, all that good stuff. So that's what we focused on, right? So we want to give you what you want, So since I'm back in the local market of Detroit, of Metro Detroit, so we started wholesaling in Oakland, Macomb primarily. And we had great success. And I remember, I think the first time most people kind of took heed to like what I was doing was when I was featured on the wholesale panel for MREI in 2014 and 15 with Wendy Patton, and back to back. And when I did that, it's like people were like, oh wow, who's this guy?
Right.
And I was telling them about the successes that we had and whatnot. So that's what kind of kicked off like my Michigan real estate career. And let's see, 14, 15, and then 16. Do you want me to get into that now?
Starts getting good.
Okay. So
Starts getting good.
Okay, so 16 is when the rubber really meets the road, right?
Right.
Because now I'm really like, okay, I'm really gonna like treat this like a business, right? Before I could.
So what does that mean when you said I'm going to treat this like a business? What did you do different that you weren't doing before?
Goal setting for one.
Okay.
So
getting up, making a goal.
Yeah.
You have a vision on what's going to happen next. Because that was one thing.
And I kind of studied the local market, saw who was the power players, and I just wanted to beat them.
Right.
So back then my mentality was beat the competition.
Right.
Now my mentality is more so you are your own competition.
You got to put some healthy pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Essentially, no matter who you're competing with, you actually are competing with yourself.
Right.
First.
Right.
And if you happen to crush the numbers while you're at it, great.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that. It just helps you to kind of keep going because there's no focus if you don't know if you should do 100 units this year or 150 units.
Right.
There's a big difference between those two.
Right.
Right?
And so at the time, I had really no notion or experience in the commercial realm. This was all single families in 2016. So my goal was to close 75 plus deals that year, right?
And how did you do?
We ended up closing over 100. And
that's a lot.
It is a lot. And the thing is that I say we, but I really didn't have a team at that point.
Right.
Like I was literally.
So who was doing all the work though?
So I had like one inspector, and I'm gonna shout him out, Cashman. Love you, man, because he was my backbone. Seriously, like
I don't even know you. I love you, man.
Yeah, Cashman was Cashman is the truth. Thank you, Cashman. So basically, Cashman would go out to the properties, take photos, and primarily at that time, I connected with a group out of the UK.
Okay.
And they had like a plethora of.
How do you like the time difference calling them in?
I know, man. So that led to what I'm gonna tell you soon, right? That 5 hour. I believe they're 5 hours ahead of us. 5 or 6 hours. And when it would be like 2:00 in the morning here, it's like 7.
I know. I know.
There.
I used to live there for a little while, so I know what you mean.
So basically, I'm working 24 hours, really. Like I'm not really eating well. I'm not really taking care of my health. I'm not really sleeping. I'm just like grinding 24/7. And I didn't really have a team. It was just me and Cashman basically.
Right.
Cashman would go out to the properties, take the photos, and since they were in another country, the buyers, he would provide like a 25 page, like inspection report, which gives them details on the current condition of the property, so they would know what they're buying.
It's a dream come true for an out of state or out of country investor.
So he made my life so much easier. But then sometimes I would still go out to properties if his schedule didn't permit. Take pictures, and if the international guys didn't want it, then I had to sell it locally. So I was doing everything: contract writing, taking pictures if Cashman wasn't able to do it, marketing the property, dealing with the title company, everything. And I still
at this point, are you starting to feel burnt out?
Totally burnt out, and that's what happened in June of 2016. I went to the hospital. For 6 days, and because I was malnutrition, and it was just crazy, being hooked up to IVs for 6 days straight.
Right.
And the crazy thing is that even while I'm in the hospital, I got the title company coming to the hospispittal so I could sign docs because I was double closing stuff.
Still didn't learn your lesson, eh?
And my mom's, like in my room kicking out the title. Get out! You're the reason he's here.
It's a chronic burnout when you are grinding so hard. Video gamers go through that. There's a lot of other skill sets that are in different industries, even actors, even people that are in. Just really demanding roles, where they have no choice.
Right.
People want so much from them; they're under so much pressure. And I felt like, I felt the same way of what you're describing. You kind of put yourself in that bubble of pressure where you just have to do this because you said so, and nothing else matters. But if your health doesn't come first, that's when it's all comes crumbling down, doesn't it? So what happens next after the 6 days pass and you get out of the hospital? What does that look like now?
So actually, one of my international investors actually flew into town, and now he had bought like about 6 or 7 properties from me, without actually seeing them. So he flew into town, picked them up from the airport, and he's like, John, how's your personal life? I'm like, what personal life? Like he's a married guy, he has kids, and he's very successful. He's like, man, you need balance. That's what you're missing. What's the point of making all this money if you have no one to share it with and you have no love in your life? He's like, you're missing a major component in your life. And I said, man, no, like I'm just all about grinding right now. I'm young, like I don't care about that. I deal with love later. And he's like, no, man, you need to implement that. So a month later, I met someone. And it was great. It was great because it gave me a sense of balance that I haven't really had up until that point.
I haven't seen you happier, man. I've been watching your Facebook feed for a long time.
Yeah.
And I saw this dramatic difference of you're just smiling ear to ear in every single photo, and I'm like, what's up with this guy?
Yeah.
What's different?
Yeah.
And then I start seeing her in the photos. I'm like, oh, that's what's up with this guy.
Yeah. So she's the second one, the one that you see now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But the first one, was very important because that was my attempt to start
lay down the
progressing
foundation.
into,
To get
be able to
own.
separate work and personal.
Awesome.
And I think it's a very important dynamic. And actually, I forgot who said it, but it was a very, very multi-billionaire, successful multi-billionaire that said that he cuts off his phone at 7:00 at night every day,
like
no
that.
matter what is going on. I haven't got there yet.
Makes a big difference,
I haven't got there yet.
It's one of the goals.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I would like to get to that point to not have to feel like I still gotta chase the rabbit.
That's right.
So while you're at the hospital, was there you said that the investor came over and he kind of, had pushed you to, you got to get some balance. Was there, were you sitting in the hospital thinking like, man, this is like too much? Did it click yet at that point? Or was it when the investor came over that you
It didn't click about the personal. It just clicked like, okay, I just got to start taking, like something has to change.
Eating a little bit more.
Really, it let me know that, okay, I need a team. I need a bigger team.
Okay.
I need to be
You start delegating.
Right. I need to be more team oriented. It's not just about crushing the competition. You got to start bringing the competition in as strategic partners. They may have a property. I may have a buyer, vice versa. Work smarter, not harder.
It's all about partnerships, relationships.
And, so then I start opening up like, hey, so I start reaching out to the top, guys in the game. Like, hey, I see you doing your thing. You see me doing my thing. Let's work together.
I think that's a make or break difference between the growth I've seen with you and your business. Is that I see a lot of people that are trying to break into the industry, and they either burn out quickly, they struggle, or they just exit because it's too hard. And it takes a lot of relationships and partnerships. So if you don't have mentors, and that's exactly what you're talking about right now.
Right.
You're basically reaching out to all these people that you would like to be like. You're surrounding yourself with the best versions of what you want to achieve, and you're just making that the path. That's it.
Yeah, because it's all about synergy. You don't have to, spend as much of your own energy if you have synergy, right? 1 + 2 = 3, right? In that notion. So that's what I did, and it definitely helped. So the rest of the year, I was still able to, crush it, but I was able to crush it with the competition per se.
Right.
Then after 2016, after, I achieved my goal of 75+ deals, I said, okay, time to work smarter, not harder. How about if we transition into, what if you can make the same amount of income that you made last year, closing 100+ deals, which is 10 deals, right? You're working less, and that's when I started looking into commercial apartment buildings, And
That's what you're known for.
Exactly.
That's my apartment building guy.
And that's how it happened, because I'm like, okay, we achieved the success on the single family realm. I didn't really see any other wholesalers really consistently crushing it on the commercial side in Michigan, right?
You know what I'm going to say, in my opinion? I've done probably over 5,000 transactions in my career. It takes a evolving, growth structure to get from selling what you started with to selling an apartment building. I have never in my career ever seen anybody start with apartment buildings unless they had a really key role model, mentor in place to guide them through that process.
Right.
But the way you've learned it now, you can basically talk to somebody and set them up for success because you already know what's going to happen in terms of that large renovation expense, dealing with the city, what all of that looks like. And that's what is the most important part of this is that before you start playing the big game, you've got to play the small. Like in the UFC, you got to do the small fights before you get to the big fight. You got to work your way up there, right?
Right. So, and the crazy notion or myth that I would like to break is that many people think that the commercial game is so much more difficult than residential. In my opinion, it's not. Right? It's just more doors. Instead of one lease agreement, you may have 50. Instead of one rent roll, you may have 50.
But there's more work involved.
It's more work involved.
But when you've mastered the foundation or the basics of it per se,
right,
you can really start covering more faster and quicker and get good at it.
Yep. And so shout out to Dylan Borland. He was one of the guys in Michigan at the time that was like kind of crushing it on the commercial. And he never was my mentor, but I know David Topin was like his mentee, and he kind of took the game that Dylan gave him and just started crushing it, and just at a much younger age than me. And I saw that, and like I wish that I had that. Like I wish, because I've never had a mentor. That's the thing. Like I was self-taught with everything. I used to just lurk on the forums. So one piece of advice I would say for anybody just starting out is find a mentor and try to add value, even if you have to do the grunt work, right? Go out and take pictures for them, go out and run their errands, seriously, because it's definitely going to pay off in the end because they're going to be dropping jewels here and there, and you just got to be there to receive it.
You just got to be really humble when it comes down to it. That's really what it boils down to. And now people watch TV shows. There's so many doctor TV shows, and you see the residents work to the bone,
right? And
you think, what the heck are you doing,
right?
And then there's all these politics involved. But if you break it down, if they hadn't chased down those top doctors, those top mentors to learn from them, it wouldn't give them that extra edge. They wouldn't get better faster. That's the whole point of this. Why do you want to waste a bunch of time when you can just do it quicker by adding a mentor? See, like you spend a lot of time reading, and good for you, and that's great. And I try to read as much as I can as well. It helps, but having a mentor adds a whole different dynamic to the whole thing.
And from what you're saying, adding the value in terms of like, no mentor's just going to take you on and start, grooming you and handing you everything you need. You have to show that you're willing to. If
you call him daddy, all depends.
Man, that word daddy gets you a long way.
Definitely does. But like, you have to add that. You have to show that you have drive, that you have the passion, that you're humble, that you're ready to learn, and you're not just there to take. You're there to give and show that you're willing to put your best foot forward every day when you come out there and learn.
That is so pivotal. And it's like, like my inbox is flooded with people just like, John, I see you doing your thing. I'm in Michigan or I'm wherever. I want to do my thing. Teach me the game. Put me in the game, coach. So what I do, is so I like Sean Terry. He's crushing it in Arizona. I love Sean Terry. He's running like a 6-figure a month wholesale business. He's so positive, so inspirational. He has a free podcast you could just check out. And so Sean Terry has this free ebook, right? It's about 118 pages, give or take. And the way I test people is I give them the ebook for free, because some people come to me like, John, I'll pay you to teach me. I'm like, I don't want your money, right? So I give them this free ebook, and I'm like, read it in one day. One day, that's your test. One day. If you do not read it in one day, don't contact me again. Seriously.
I like it.
Because if you don't invest in yourself, why should I invest in you?
Yeah.
And I promise
Otherwise, it becomes reverse babysitting. You took money, and now you're.
I promise you, 90+% of people I give the book to never do anything with it.
So what's your version of wholesaling? Because a lot of people do straight up joint ventures or do a different version. What does wholesaling mean in the context from John Cleare?
Yeah, so essentially you're just flipping contracts, right?
Okay.
You're not technically selling the house, especially if you're unlicensed. Bit of advice: get licensed. Even if you don't plan on doing anything with the license, you don't have to do traditional real estate.
Right.
I would say get licensed. The laws are changing. In some states, it is illegal to wholesale.
Yep. Know your
without
laws.
being a license.
Gotta know
without
your
being
laws.
licensed, right?
Yep.
You gotta know your laws. In Michigan, technically, if you broker more than 5 deals a year,
You need to have a license. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. I know
Right.
many that are doing that.
Or they know that and they just hope they don't get caught.
Exactly.
But when you do, then all the money you made wasn't worth it just to give
wasn't
it
worth
away
it.
in a fine
It wasn't
or to your
worth it.
attorney. So
It wasn't worth it because the Attorney General is definitely cracking down.
you need to
on
know what your laws are. It only makes sense to work and actually retain the money that you're making.
that. Right.
So you got to do business the right way no matter what.
Always stay compliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that another key point that I would add to your tip would be add a lot of disclosures when you do a wholesale to a buyer
Correct.
who doesn't understand what wholesaling is. So if someone calls me up and says, "Hey, I'd like you to take this property off my hands. I inherited. I don't want it. I don't have any money to deal with it." And so I want to sit down with them and explain that we're not going to put on the MLS. You could have sold it for more money. You're gonna do it this way because you just want fast cash. You don't want to deal with people walking through the property. Maybe it's disgusting. Maybe it's not in good shape, or whatever the case is. So I think that it's really key to make sure those disclosures are written up really, really well.
Right.
And there's transparency.
Transparency is key.
Because why not?
I think-
if you
I
run
think
into that person, right,
wholesaling-
at the grocery store, and do you want a bad reputation or good reputation?
Right.
Real estate and wholesale is based on referral.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, that means you have to conduct good business to last.
Correct.
And I don't know if I'm sure you've probably seen this. I think wholesaling gets kind of a bad name a lot of times.
It does.
A lot of people are kind of like sleazy with it. They're not open and just transparent with what they're doing and why they're doing it. And like Mark alluded to, if you're upfront and open about how this process works and that it's you want to get out of this place,
right?
And we can do that, and we can close fast with cash. You're going to have cash in hand. You don't want to go through the listing process and the whole waiting around, going through a contract, going through all the inspections and everything. And this could be drawn out for months,
right?
And not even work out. Where okay, if you're willing to take less money, we can guarantee you X dollars. And it works out. Everybody's happy. I think a lot of times people get a real bad feeling about it when they hear wholesale, like, oh, you're sleazy.
Right.
But there is a right way to do it.
It definitely is, and disclosure is definitely key. So what we actually do, we also, so we tell the seller up front that we're not the buyer. Right, we have a network of cash buyers that close quick, but we need the property under contract in order to have equitable interest in the property. That gives us the legal right to market somebody else's property. Right,
Because otherwise, you're not allowed to unless you're a real estate agent just listing it on the MLS.
Correct.
Right.
So the seller already knows up front, hey, we're not the buyer. Now we may either assign it or we may double close it. Either or, that's up to our discretion. But we do, disclose that we are licensed, but we are not representing you. We don't owe you any fiduciary duties. We represent ourselves in this transaction. You represent yourself. But we're still going to get you cash. We're going to pay our closing costs, and you're not going to have to pay us a commission. And a lot of them like that. And, typically we close 2
Yeah, I think it's all about being transparent. You got the mentors or you have a good attorney. We are not attorneys, so we're not giving you any legal advice today.
Right.
But it is important that you seek that advice before you go about doing the business. And that's why we have a lot of respect for you, because any feedback from anybody that's done business with you has literally always said, love the clarity, love the transparency. I know what I'm getting. I got what I signed up for.
Right.
So,
and that's another thing, if you're new in wholesaling, don't pretend to be the buyer, and just be as transparent as possible. It really helps because essentially when you get to closing.
this is where honesty pays, actually.
Exactly, because
Honesty
the seller's
pays.
going to see that your company name is not the one on the closing docs, right? Like as the buyer. So they're going to find out eventually.
Some people can read.
Right.
Watch
so
out.
the truth is going to come out,
Yeah.
So just disclose it up front,
Exactly.
It's very
just
simple.
easier. It's just a lot easier. Like my daughter, she's 3. She's watching a cartoon about about telling lies and how it grows into this ugly, hideous monster. And so she's just like walking around. She's like, "Don't lie, it's gonna get real ugly." And so I love it how she's incorporating. And to keep it simple, that's pretty much how you need to incorporate that.
Yeah,
Right.
And that's I think where the bad name comes from. Is a lot of
Right.
people go around saying like, "I'm going to buy your property,"
Right.
putting a name down on it, and then
5 minutes
like
before closing.
5 minutes before closing, it's like they're pulling the carpet out from under them, and then they're like, "Wait, what's
Right.
going on? I thought you were buying this property."
Right.
No, I sold your contract.
And another major point I would say, don't contract the property unless you're like 99% sure you can sell it.
Yeah.
You know, like that, like, because
Right. That's where
This
all that
fits-
sponging of
Yeah.
information that you did pays off, where you
Right.
did your numbers right, you evaluated the property properly, and you discounted for what renovations are needed per se in most of these
Right.
cases, and you put out that number to the investor that makes sense. Because everyone has to turn a profit because their business model is usually only that.
Right.
Unless it's a charity, but that's rare.
Right. Definitely rare. Yeah, because most investors don't run nonprofits.
Usually not.
You know, so
I don't know any though, but
No.
exactly.
never
You know,
know.
so it's definitely for profit, but you got to make the numbers make sense on the seller's end, obviously for your end, you know, like as the intermediary, and of course your end buyer. Your end buyer is you know your unofficial client. You know, you don't owe them any fiduciary duties, but you should give them honesty, loyalty, and respect.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. So I know I remember you kind of mentioning how you switched from just doing your job per se into looking at this as a full blown business. What does your business cover exactly? What do you do? So if you don't wholesale today, tomorrow, next week, how are you going to make money?
Well, off referrals. So I've actually been referral based since 2017. 2016 really was like the stamp in the ground. I really made a great name for myself here in Michigan and in other markets because I'm very social media oriented, and I would post different successes and whatnot. So right now we're like pretty much like 90+% referral based. And it's usually just like the repeat investors that bought from us. They have properties they want to sell. They're not just buyers. They want to sell as well. They may want to sell quick without their property being all on the MLS, and they come to us, and it works out.
So you have a buy and sell business, you have a
Buy and
wholesale
sell.
business, and what else does that? Do you encompass anything else?
Yeah, so retail now that I'm a broker, because when I
Right.
was licensed as an agent, I still did wholesale. I only
Right.
used the license to get access to the MLS. But I still, wholesale for me, the off-market game will always be my number one focus.
That's what you're good at, your niche.
It's
Yeah.
just my niche. I've always favored working with investors rather than the traditional homeowner looking for, their perfect house. I don't want you to not buy this house just because you don't like the paint color.
Right.
Like for investors, it's just numbers. If the numbers make sense, they pull the trigger.
There's no emotion usually.
It's no emotion.
Yeah, usually.
And I love dealing with,
Yeah.
just straightforward individuals like that.
Definitely a lot easier. Now, before I'm interested in the transition more into the commercial side, but before we get in there, I wanted to wrap back a little bit, because in your whole story from beginning to end, it sounds like there's been key points that have kind of been like these pivotal mindset changes, really, and I think that's the biggest thing that differentiates successful people from not successful people. And I think
Right.
that it sounds like those mindset changes is what's changed your trajectory in life.
Right.
So what were like the key things and thought processes, especially I'm that Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that's I think how a lot of people start,
It
myself
is.
especially, reading
It
that
is.
book. But what were those like real key trajectory changes that got you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I can even go back to 2008. I guess I kind of skipped over that. Basically, I kind of lost like 90% of my real estate network. And I'm talking about people that were millionaires on paper that had to go back to 9 to 5s. Seeing that, I'm talking to these guys every day, and just seeing that really was an eye-opener. And I said, if I can survive 2008, I could pretty much survive anything, right? That was just the words I
Was it an eye opener in the sense it made you kind of realize that these people didn't have their house in order?
Yeah, they didn't. They were
Right.
over-leveraged.
Yeah, I think a constant battle that we have in America is financial literacy is really out of whack. It's
Right.
out of balance. I was listening to a good friend of mine in an interview, and he was talking about how he feels that the government Their responsibility is just to get you by when you're of age, and then they say, sorry, you're not my responsibility anymore, and let you just, that's it, they're done.
Right.
So there's nobody really there to ensure that you understand how to manage your money.
Right.
And before you do a business or even a life event, you can't really do it properly without understanding the concept of money. One of the interesting lessons I learned early on with investors who'd immigrated from Hong Kong to Toronto is they were buying downtown condos, and they would keep telling me, they said that their business was worth this much, they brought this much cash, and they only live off 50%.
Right.
And there's no bending on that rule, no matter what happens, no matter what new trend is out there, no matter how nice of a house is available, they do not spend more than that percentage. Again, just defining the fact of what managing money means to a group that's successful.
Right.
Was the illustration of that. But it was interesting to see. Did you kind of feel like you did that at some point, or how did you kind of figure out that you had to manage this 1099 income per se differently? Because a third of it's got to go to taxes relatively, a third's got to go to expenses, and you got to live off 33% now.
Right.
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 So what did that feel like, and how did you kind of adapt to that?
Well, just had to really, and I guess, like one real eye opener for me was, so I will always kind of follow up on my deals after they close, right? So whether I sold a fix and flip deal 2, 3, 4 months later, I'll always kind of see what the investor did.
That's rare.
And
that's rare.
It was crazy because, like when I got into the apartment game, right? Like we're thinking that we're making good money, and like some of the apartment buildings that we sold, those guys primarily wouldn't even do any work to it, right? And they would just flip it again, make $100,000 in a day, So that really just like opens your mind, like, wow, like, okay, we gotta implement some other strategies instead of just wholesaling. Maybe we can hotel,
Right.
Where maybe.
And what is that?
Yeah, so maybe
for people listening.
Yeah. So we purchase the property, make it like in broom swept condition, right? So that it's not fully rehab. Just clean it out. Just clean it out. Make it look, presentable, and put on MLS. And your margins can be slightly higher than if you just wholesaled it.
Again, if your numbers are thorough, you know what your numbers are.
Right.
Before you get into all of that.
Because like I remember we had a Royal Oak deal, and it was like an inherited property, just 3-bed frame property. The comps in the area were like 180, 185-ish. We got on the contract for $60,000. It needed everything. It was grandma's house, right? And we flipped it for double. So we sold it for 120. We're making almost $60,000, and we're like, oh wow, we didn't do no work. So the guy that bought it from us, right? Usually he does the rehab. He said, man, they left too much meat on the bone, right? So he put on the MLS for like $35,000 higher, and then a week later sold it and made a $30K profit. Like, damn, like we could have did that, like, So seeing examples like that, like like you got to implement other strategies, not just wholesaling, not just bird dogging, not just hoteling, retail, residential, commercial, pretty much cover all gamuts, so that you have a lot of tools in your tool belt, because different properties present different situations, and different situations present opportunities for different solutions, so.
It's a custom job every time.
It's a custom job.
Every time.
Yeah, and you made it this far, and the one I keep thinking back to you in college, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you're a smart guy, right? There's no getting around it. You got one of the best scholarships out there that got you into U of M and was going to pay you up through PhD. Like PhD. But on that track, that would have taken you to a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So when in your sophomore year, when your mom handed you Rich Dad Poor Dad,
she kind of regretted it at first. She was like, "Why? Why did you drop out? Oh, come on! Like any mom's gonna like, come on, you get a full ride and you drop out. Like, of course,
I'm sure that crushed
like
her.
At first, she was definitely upset with me. And like, oh my God, I did not give you this for you to drop out. But in the long run, she sees, okay, I get it.
Yeah, it makes sense now. But
makes sense.
So when you're reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and for those that haven't, obviously pick up the book because it changes your perspective, right? And when he talks about, the worst place to be is basically a 9 to 5 in terms of you get taxed the most, and you're stuck working for other people's dreams. And then you can still own a business, but you're working in your business, so you don't technically really own the business per se. Right. But he said at the end, it's where you want to reach is like that, where you have the constant income coming in terms of you either own a business or property, things like that, assets instead of liabilities, which is that when you're working at 9 to 5, usually you just accumulate a lot of liabilities.
Right.
And I'm sure, and just like when you were in the 2008, those people that worked jobs that were millionaires on paper had built up an incredible amount of liability,
right,
and had
they
very
were
few
over-leveraged.
assets,
right.
Real assets that were making them money consistently. And it sounds like now you're at a place in your business and with the referrals and things like that you've created a business that is almost to the point of self-sustaining, where it's bringing you money month after month after month that you can live on, and that's going to be there regardless of the market, regardless of where you're at. But what was your mindset? Did you think when going into that at the start of college and stuff, did you think that 9 to 5 was just going to be your life before reading that book?
Yeah, definitely. I was taught to get good grades, and shout out to U of M, but they really teach you how to work for someone else, and engineering was grueling. I mean, I remember being in, so this was on North Campus, like where the engineering school is, and we would be in the library 12, 14 hours a day, and, like they're based on the curve system. So, Mr. 4.0 is now getting a 2.7. And then everybody's like, oh, a 2.7 is good for U of M. I'm like, this is crap. Like, what the heck? Like,
yeah.
So, but nothing wrong with college. Nothing wrong with it, but they kind of taught me how to work for someone else. And, just like I said, I feel like that I'm full-time unemployable. And, so everything comes full circle. The crazy thing is that so my colleagues at the time, right, they graduated with their engineering degree. They're making 6 figures now. Well, not sure what they're doing now because of what. But before all this happened this year, a lot of them were making 6 figures, but they were working like 60 hours a week. So one thing that you can't put a price on is freedom. I can work when I want. I can sleep as long as I want. Before all this happened, I could go on vacation when I want, and that dynamic shift, right? So the good thing is that you got the freedom. The also, like, the flip side is that you got to know what to do with it, right? Because you can't just be lazy and just have all this freedom, right? So you got to be self-motivated.
Yeah, it can't be counterproductive.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can't be counterproductive. So the full circle dynamic shift is those same colleagues are now buying properties from me, and I'm giving them resources to get into real estate because they make great money, right. like they have great credit, make 6 figures a year, but they have no freedom, they got to save them.
That's what they're after now.
Yeah, that's what they're after now, right?
Yeah.
Without this, they're working for retirement,
right?
For their pension and their 401k. That's what they're working towards,
right?
And for you, as young as you are, it sounds like within 10 years or so you could walk away from the game entirely. And
definitely.
Right.
I could, but I never would.
Yeah,
man. Honestly,
you've got that drive.
I just love the game.
You've got that energy.
Well, why waste the skill set that you have? Why waste the gift?
Exactly.
It's an infectious energy that you got that I love.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's part of the reason why you've gotten to where you are, and especially like connections, things like that. When you're talking to these investors, I'm sure they know you got the passion, you've got the energy, you've got the drive to work for them and to work for the money that you got.
Right, definitely. And so basically, like I work for my freedom. Like I love what I do. I love the art of the deal. Every deal is different. And it's just like a blank canvas. Every deal is like a blank canvas, and you can create, the outcome however you want. And that's what I'm attracted to with real estate, So I actually make it easier. It's not easy, but I make it easier because I have fun with it.
Yeah, but you've also done it for so long, so you have a smooth process.
Yeah.
And so when you do it for a long time, eventually you create a great process. You delegate all the junk stuff that you don't want to do anymore. You create a lot of freedom. and then you create the opportunity to do what you want.
Right. And the thing is, so I kind of look at real estate just like with a normal job, right? You got your white collar tasks and you got your blue collar tasks. I don't do the blue collar stuff. I don't do the showings. I don't go out and take pictures no more. I can hire somebody to do all that. The white collar stuff, I deal with the title company. I write up the contracts. You know, I could delegate the marketing, but I like kind of doing my own marketing. Like I said, I'm very social media oriented, so I like being like at the helm. You know, so I'm trying to let that go because I'm managing 4 Facebook profiles, 3 Instagram profiles, 30+ thousand.
That's a
followers.
full-time job.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's like yeah. So I'm managing 10+ profiles on a daily basis, but I love it. I'm just posting the same stuff to every profile. It's nothing different.
Yeah.
So eventually I'm gonna have to, you know, let go of the reins of that. But right now I'm having fun.
That's good. We like it. We watch it. We have fun watching you.
Yeah. And so encompassing of our podcast, obviously you've hit a lot of points, things you've learned. Going back through some of the mistakes, and if you had to give some advice on what you've learned to this point, somebody that maybe they're working the 9 to 5, maybe they're in college right now, and that's just not for them, because obviously you realize college just wasn't for you. Like it wasn't the route you wanted to go anymore. You saw yourself separating yourself from that. And what are maybe 1, 2 things that you were like, this is hardest lesson or what I've learned, and what you would pass on to somebody else that needed to hear something to get them on that right track or on a different track?
Right. So I guess number 1, I would say keep doing what you're doing. Don't just leave what you're doing for income just to jump into real estate. You know, sometimes it may take you 6, 9 months, a year before you even close your first deal. That's just a reality.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think that's really good advice. Don't chase the money per se.
Right.
Go after your passion.
Go after your passion.
But like master that passion.
Master it.
Master it. Know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Get to know every aspect about it.
Definitely. You know, so
Because you don't know you love it till you actually know it.
right, you know, and you're definitely gonna get that wow. You know, like I don't know what your wow number is, but once you get that wow number, it may be $5,000. You know, like maybe you never got a $5,000 all at once. You know, maybe you got it, you know, comprised of 2 or 3 separate paychecks. You know, so you never really had that chunk, or it could be $50,000 or whatever your wow number is. Like when you get it, that's when something's gonna click in your head. Like, wow, so if I can duplicate what I just did to get this, where could I be? You know, and I think that, you know, it's all about mindset. So even now, like I constantly read because I never feel like I know everything. You know, I constantly look up to people that's doing better than me. You know, like I want to hang around more successful people than me. You know, I constantly challenge myself to read, you know, 2, 3 books a month. You know, because it may be like 1 or 2 nuggets within that book that I may not know about, right? Or like niche, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you because we don't know anything in terms of everything when we measure it up. So you're always learning something.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no way that you've learned everything that exists
Right.
on Earth. It's
Right.
possible.
And
so you've always got to be in a position to be learning,
Right.
and have fun with it.
Yeah. And, you know, and I think you'd look at the most successful people, they're always reading stuff.
Always.
You know, and like you said earlier, when somebody comes to you and once you're, you know, you
give
kind of
them
mentor
something
and
to
stuff, you
read.
give them something to read. And
Exactly.
that does kind of separate, you know,
Right.
because, you know, reading and having the drive to even just want to know something new.
Right.
They're coming to you and they want to know something new.
Right.
But if they're not willing to do it on their own, right.
And actually going back to college, right? Because this is another thing I did while I was in engineering school. So I was with Amway, Quickstar. They changed the name to Quickstar, but it was Amway, right? So I'm in college, and so I kind of was an independent business owner even way back then. So I'm showing the plan, you know, when I'm not in, you know, class and whatnot. So it kind of, and like the good thing about Amway, even though I really didn't make any money, the good thing is that they made you read books every month. They made you listen to tapes while you're driving your car instead of listening to music. They made you like, you know, so their educational aspect was just bar none, you know, and I think that's what helped progress me into being steadfast about, you know, consuming knowledge consistently, you know, is because at the early age of doing that, you know, it definitely helped.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think it's just become kind of a common thing we ask people, and obviously 2016 was a big eye opener for you, but work-life balance.
Yeah.
Right. You've you've gone through a lot of years as an aggressive hustling bachelor.
Yep.
And now you alluded to that when you had you'd found somebody, and then you have somebody new as of this year, but you got to obviously have time for the people you care about, family,
definitely,
and significant others, and just time for yourself, right?
It's so important.
That struggle is real.
It's so important.
Yeah, it's huge. But what today? How do you balance things? How is it? What have you learned? That's do you have anything like systems, or is it just?
Man, it's just I got lucky, man. She's just a dynamic person, just like Mark said, like he could see it in my posts now. I mean, she's just very supportive. She even supported me, just progressing to that next level by getting my broker's license. Like she was like, look, she went old school. She wrote it on the board, clipped it on the wall. Look, you need to take the test by this date, and you're gonna pass it by this date. And it was just like no room for error. I'm like, yes, baby. It takes a good woman to like do that, because I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm making good money doing my. She's like, no. This is the fight of your career. And that's exactly what she said. And I said, wow. And I kind of look at it like that, right? Because, it goes to show that you can regress from being a bird dog to being a wholesaler to agent to broker, and next it may be CCIM. That's what I got my aspirations on next, right? That's like the PhD of commercial real estate, or just whatever you want, like getting licensed in other states, especially, taking advantage of the reciprocity, laws that exist, just because you're licensed in a given state. Take advantage of that, especially since we can't really travel right now. So, that's another goal. And so I just got blessed, that's all I can say. I definitely got blessed, and she pushes me. She's not in real estate, which is actually kind of a breather, right?
Right, because you don't have to discuss business right away.
I don't have to,
Just explain all your deals and what you did today.
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a relief, right? And we're not in competition with each other, low key, So, oh yeah, how many did you sell this month? How many did? No, we don't have to go through that, right? So it's actually a breath of fresh air.
So she sounds amazingly supportive, and that's. I feel like so often that's hard to find sometimes.
So is.
And so she obviously takes care of you, and more in a supportive way in your business and your life and things like that, and keeps pushing you, which is amazing. So how do you take the time out to take care of her and to take care of yourself and have that
she's
alone time
spoiled.
besides
She's super spoiled, man. Yeah, like I take her to the best places, whatever she wants, she can get, and basically, like, I haven't been as eager to always answer my phone. Like, I've been ignoring probably about 50-60% of my phone calls, if it's not a dire issue, like related to a pending closing or something like that. Just making yourself step away from the business sometimes, and just
you have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with it.
Yeah.
So you're setting more boundaries in terms of
setting more boundaries,
business not seeping into when you're on your personal time.
Right. And I'm not necessarily dealing with the international investors like that anymore. Working 2, 3, 4 in the morning all the time. Unless she sleep, then I kind of can sneak and do work. But, but yeah, for the most part, I have been kind of stepping back a little bit and just trying to automate as much as I can. Yeah,
and that's leveraging and automating and stuff. That's I'm sure you can attest to is a key to your current success and where you're at.
Definitely.
Right now, because it's you as you were in 2016, you just don't have the time if you're not as it's just you or just you and one other person doing what you're doing. You got nothing, and and I'm sure if you were still on that work pace, she probably wouldn't be around. She wouldn't be putting up with that.
Exactly. And, And it's just a blessing, I made a decision that that's what I want. Is I'm not getting any younger. I'm 36 now. I have no kids, so like I don't want to be 50 plus still trying to hustle deals with no personal life. And it's just like, okay, now is the time to really buckle down about that and set some goals in your personal life. It's not just about achieving all this greatness in your business life.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. I've talked to a lot of people who do acting, and they do a lot of asset management business. So they're just swamped with work. They've got put endless hours in, and they get to a point where they're so successful, but they've just let it, the time pass to a point where they haven't ever caught up to creating a personal life. Or that balance.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, like, I haven't even been on vacation in the last 2-3 years. This was supposed to be my year, and then you know what happened.
Yeah, COVID, man. It ruins everything.
So it's like, so after hopefully all this gets.
What's your prediction into where the market's headed, or what you think is going to happen with? Do you think it's still a good time to buy investments into early next year? What do you see going on with the market?
Yeah, so right now, a lot of tenants have been late on their rent. Government assistance for some areas is out there. Like I have a seller. He has 9 single families right now. He's recouped about 90% of his back rent. Tenants haven't paid in like 5-6 months. So there is government assistance out there. I know they're thinking that the R word is going to come in 2021. That's what everybody's kind of predicting. We'll see. If it does happen, I doubt it's going to be nearly as bad as 2008.
I would agree with you on that. If we see any sort of type of recession, it would be like a mild version of it,
right?
Not the tsunami of like what was previous,
right?
And I think a lot of people are hung up on, I'm just gonna wait, and it's just gonna be a crazy deal.
Yeah. Anytime I talk to people, it's always they always allude to the 2008, and I'm like, we're not perfect in terms of what we do.
They're not measuring the other aspects.
Yeah,
right? What about population, scale of business?
Yeah, right.
And we have
Google's
learned.
in Detroit. Like if you start analyzing all these different things that didn't exist in 2008, why aren't we factoring all of that into the discussion? Because then it's not relative.
Yeah. Right.
We have learned from 2008. The government's taken steps and precautions, and they can't just hand out loans. I mean, it's harder to get loans now.
Harder.
So they're more qualified.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's more underwriting. Like you need more than just 3 months reserve to get a mortgage. Just like I got, and like that's why I got in foreclosure for the one property because, so that was a failure, but I bounced back from that. And a lot of people weren't able to do that because they may have done that 10 times over.
Yeah.
And
I personally think that if our economy and the housing market and everything was so, if it would crash, it would have crashed during COVID.
Right.
Because so many bad things happened and shut down and things like that, and unemployment skyrocketed quick. If it were going to shut down, it would have shut down. Right. And 2021, I think, as we start to open things back up and people go back to work, and even the businesses that shut down either get replaced or new ones open, I think we're going to continue seeing some success for a while. That's my personal opinion on it. I'm not in the naysayer part.
Yeah, I
don't lean that way, but you're more in tune with in terms of the nitty gritty, the wholesale side.
So actually, a lot of local investors actually doubled down during COVID. A lot of international, out of state guys kind of backed away, but from what I've seen, the local guys really like, okay, now it's time.
Yep.
And now the out of state and international guys, now they're back in it. Like, okay.
Well, they needed a minute to digest all that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the local investors are sharp because they know. I have seen they'll probably think that they've seen some changes between 2008 till now. Some people did learn some lessons. Some people are living differently. They did manage themselves differently during COVID. I thought it was pretty surprising to see how much of people retaining their homes and investments. That was interesting to see.
Right.
Those are some key factors in why local investors are starting to realize that's where their money needs to go.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think we're all right in that. But yeah. Any last questions? We've covered a lot.
We have.
You have.
Around,
yeah.
But,
Such a great
story.
Tell us something wild that's happened during a deal where you're like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah. Give us one crazy story.
Give us a crazy story.
Before we get out of here.
Yeah.
One crazy story.
Oh man.
We all got one, John.
Yeah, I know, right?
Spill it.
I mean,
Names are not necessary.
No, I know. Yeah, so me and my partner Mike, we were doing this showing with a well-known local investor. I won't say his name, but this was one of his properties, and he owns hundreds of properties. And this one, unfortunately, had a squatter. And we go through the back door because the front door was like jammed or whatever. So we go through the back door, and we have international buyers with us, right? And the back door led into the kitchen. and it's like a squatter in there, and he's shooting up, and I promise you, this was the most polished investor. Like, we've closed a lot of deals.
Right.
I saw him go crazy, like cursing up a store, get out, all this crazy stuff. So I never, experienced nothing like that.
It's like a scene out of a movie.
Yeah, that was probably the craziest. I mean, he literally had it just ready. I'm like, wow, okay. So one thing, when you think that you've seen it all in real estate, you really haven't.
Yeah,
so many surprises.
Yeah, so many crazy stories.
Yeah, always something new.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming out. I mean,
Thank you, John.
your story's one in a million, and we wish you the best of success. Obviously, you've been on, through your failures, you've now been on a trajectory of success and getting bigger and bigger. And I think your mindset, your drive, your passion, that's what takes you where you're at. And and we love it. And
We love your energy, man.
Yeah, your energy is
Love
top
following you on
notch.
Facebook.
And the Facebook posts and everything like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you do pass it off to somebody else, it doesn't mean that your quality is going to deteriorate, or you're going to be on there less or anything like that. So,
no, I love what I do.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be there.
we love it. But we appreciate you coming out, and it's been awesome. The last time's been awesome.
Likewise.
So all right. Well, until next time. Yep. Until next time. Next time on What We've Learned podcast.